I think the biggest thing that I've learned through this project is the importance of understanding the complexity of our food system if we want to make proposals for change. I think a great example of that is around the issue of processed food. It's really, really easy to be critical of the prevalence of processed food in our lives in terms of the quality and the way that it has an impact on our health, as well as issues around environmental sustainability. But at the same time, I think in many ways it's a privilege to be able to choose to opt out of that economy. I think in recognizing that privilege, it makes it a lot easier then to be able to look at how we want to change that economy with a respect for the ways in which poverty and other issues of social justice influence people's choices around food and people's ability to access those kinds of foods. I think if we have a better understanding of those broader systems and political, social, and economic processes that take food from some farm or some manufacturing plant and put them on our tables, we'll have a better sense of how we can actually change systems to be more sustainable, equitable, and just.
Some would say that the conversation about food as it relates to social justice should begin by regarding food as a basic human right. I would agree, but further add that food should also be seen as a source of privilege. I have found that eating locally is a privilege of the relationships that we have with the farmers around us, the privilege of having a selection of healthy produce to choose from, and the privilege of being able to take the time to think about the choices that we make around food, while over 30% of Calgarians are concerned about what they will eat next. A local food system would serve to enhance food security by reducing the fossil fuels that it takes when food is transported from faraway places to our grocery stores, and return us back to the basics and use the land that we have around us to grow the local economy. I would encourage you, as I have learned myself, that it is better to do one small act than to choose to do nothing at all to turn around the picture of food insecurity in Calgary.
Food justice, as many would assert, is the ability to have access to food at all times. As my colleagues and I have surmised, access to whole foods, like organic, homemade, and local, is very much a privilege currently. But I think this leads us to a bigger, perhaps more ethical question regarding our community as a whole, and why it's so important that we know where our food comes from and how it's grown. When we look at our plates, what are we eating? Where does it come from? Where are our vegetables from? Are they local? Are they from out of province? On the one hand, by supporting, for instance, cheap meat by way of feedlots, we're enabling low-income families to buy meat, which is great, but what are the consequences of that? How is us buying cheaper food contributing to the misuse and overuse of the agricultural lands? By way of buying, for instance, feedlot meats from Costco, for example, in our ignorance, we are supporting a system and corporations that support and grow monocrops and spray our foods with numerous pesticides without any forethought of the long-term health effects or defects that might come from that. And by acknowledging and being aware of our own buying power, this can lead to perhaps even a bigger question, an issue of how we are integrating with the natural world around us, and what effect has this integration been with my own relationship with my own community. And I think for me in this project, making those links from food to social justice by way of, I'm really critically thinking of my own responsibilities and taking ownership of my own learning and where my food comes from has been paramount.
I think that this project reminded me that the intersections between food and justice are endless. When I first started this project, someone asked me, what does food have to do with social justice anyway? I think the better question is there ever a place that food doesn't relate to social justice? I think the food justice community knows the extent to which we have to question both the microsystems and macrosystems that erode our communities. On one hand, food justice questions capitalist hegemony with critiques of overproduction and maldistribution, and on the other hand, it asks what you and I are personally doing to create space in our lives to allow things to grow and nourish us. Food justice critics ask all the big questions, the small questions, and the ones in between. I think that often in social work we forget that its community is more than just people. It's the air we breathe. It's the grass that grows. It's my connection to a tasty tomato or a farmer down the road. And ironically, nature is such a human-to-human connection point that we've neglected. In a lot of ways, how we treat the land mimics how we foster community off the land. And with that in mind, I wonder if most of the inequalities we face come back to the soil in which things grow.